Hey everybody, it's the first, count it, number one episode of a show we like to call Movie Crunch. I'm Eric O'Donnell. You may know me from the Mild Mannered Geek channel, and if you don't, that's okay. I'm here with my two friends. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hello, this is Nate Schaffner.
Hello, this is Hannah Sutter.
Oh, that's very formal. This show is called Movie Crunch, and this is a show where me and my two friends, who all of us are huge film buffs, we're at AI for digital film video production. We're actually sitting in a classroom at AI right now. A class just got done, and we needed to use a classroom, so we're using this right now. But on Movie Crunch, we talk about a movie and analyze it in 4 different flavors, which I like to call writing, acting, cinematography / directing, and special effects. We also go through our favorite scenes, and then we discuss the ending. So let's do a short synopsis of the film for, the 5 of you who haven't seen this movie. Jaws. Nate, take us through it a little bit.
Yeah, basically, Jaws is about this movie where this giant, great white killer shark is attacking Amity Island and eating children, and these 3 men, played by Richard Dreyfuss, Robert Shaw, and Roy Scheider, have to hunt him down and kill him. And it's a very graphic movie. It's probably one of it's absolutely a classic, and it's Spielberg in his career has covered pretty much every genre possible, and I would Jaws is certainly a thriller. I would almost call it a horror movie too, because of the nature of the movie.
Nate, okay. I was seeing if Hannah wanted to add anything, but no. And Steven Spielberg is the director. And just to let you guys know, Nate thinks Steven Spielberg is God.
Yes, I do.
So he will be a little biased when we review Steven Spielberg films, but that's okay.
To say the least.
Yeah, to say the very least. But let's go over writing. This writing in this movie, my favorite part about it, does not feel dated at all. Like, there's no stupid references. There's no you could easily take all these lines and put it in a new movie, and it wouldn't see anything else.
And I just love that the characters feel really organic. Like, one of my favorite parts, and I know this is one of yours as well, Nate, is when the kid's in the boat and, the chief of police has been looking at pictures of sharks all dang day, and he goes out, he's like, get out of the boat. She's like, he's just playing in the boat. She sees a picture of a shark attacking a boat, and she's like, get out of the boat! You hurt your father? Like, it feels like something you would hear.
I really love that part. That's one of the many parts that are hilarious to me. And that's another thing about this movie's writing, is it has all these comedic moments, but it also transfers so seamlessly into these thrilling, downright scary moments in the film. Like, especially that part when they're comparing scars. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
When they're on the boat and they're comparing scars, and right in the middle of that, Jaws is into the boat, and it just flows really nice. It doesn't feel forced at all.
And the other great thing about this movie and its writing is, especially with this kind of a movie, the writing with this kind of a movie could have easily been silly and goofy, and it really is not. You feel for these actors, you feel for the city because of the dialogue, and there's that scene with the mayor and Roy Scheider when they're traveling across to the other island, and he says, you yell barracuda, and everybody's like, yeah, what? Who cares? But you yell shark, and you've got a picnic on the 4th of July, and that's essentially like true. I mean, that's one of those lines that could have been taken not so seriously, if you put it in the wrong hands, it's one of those lines that could have just come off as, stupid.
I just want to say that I really hated the mayor in this movie. Like, he was the worst person in the world. Like, he sees no one in the water. He's like, get in the water. There's a shark in there, but everybody should, like, get in the water. I hated him. I hated him so much.
And I hated his anchor suit. His stupid anchor suit looks like the wallpaper swallowed him, and that's what he's wearing.
I completely forgot about the suit he was wearing. It was so tacky. It looks like something you'd see on a bathroom wall. Oh God. Let's move on to the acting in this movie, which is super, super superb, on everybody's account. Like, not just the main character, like everybody's account, especially Quint, the salty sea dog guy. I love his the way he's introduced is just so awesome and just so badass. It's just so like, and then everybody just stops. Yeah. I like to think that if I did that in the middle of a room, scratch a chalkboard, and people would like listen to everything I'd say, but I know that's not true. I mean, what were you guys' favorite actors in this movie?
I loved Hooper. Like, he the comedic relief that he brings, and also the conflict that you get between him and Shaw. They're so going after one another the whole time, so that when it does get to the point where they're finally getting chummy, no pun intended, you can appreciate the path that they've taken, and you're with them at that point. You're in the boat, you're with them.
Yeah, Richard Dreyfuss, like, if you watch him in interviews for movies, he has a really great sense of humor, and it comes across especially in Jaws, because that there's that line where he says, "Oh, those 7 people that you told me to get off the boat?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, none of them are going to get out of the harbor alive." And then he smiles because it's not his fault. He's like, nobody's going to listen to me, and this is what's going to happen. And Robert Shaw, who played Quint, was just, you believe, because of the kind of actor that he was and the lines that he got, you believe that he was this experienced older fisherman who knew what he was doing, and you listened to him regardless of what you think. You knew what he was, that if you went out with him, that you would come back with a buttload of fish. And Roy Scheider, I mentioned this to you the other day, Eric. I grew up watching him on Sequest, which didn't last very long. It was only about 3 seasons. It was kind of like Star Trek underwater. But I remember when he died back in 2008, and it was just one of those things, like, you grow up watching someone every night on TV, and thank God for DVDs, but there's the scene in the movie where Quint smashes the controls on the boat.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And Roy Scheider just goes off on him, and you believe, like, for those 30 seconds, Roy Scheider is this grumpy old man who isn't getting his way at all, and now they're SOL.
Well, and he's been the one saying the whole time, like, we should get those people out of the water. We should get those people out of the water. So when he reaches that point, it's like the total climax. He's like, that was our only chance, and now it's gone. And so, like, that scene when he's sitting on the beach, remember, this is, like, the first known attack, like, scene attack, where the raft goes under and the blood's flying.
Oh, yeah, the Kidner boy.
But before that, how they have all the scenes where he's watching, and, like, it's getting closer and closer in on him as he's thinking people, like, anybody could be attacked any moment.
Yeah. It's a heavy burden that he had. That was, like, in...
You just rolled up in this town.
Yeah. And this guy hates the water. We didn't mention that before. Like, he does not like... This guy lives on an island, basically, and he does not like the water. He hates being in it. He thinks it's... And I don't blame him after this movie. Like, I can't even feel comfortable in aquariums because of this movie. But it's that scene, a scene that really gets me. You know, we're going to talk about our favorite scenes later, but one of the scenes that really gets me, especially since we're talking about the writing, one of the scenes that really gets me is when the Kittner boy's mom is all like, they think they caught the shark. Like, all those people, like, they think they got this tiger shark. Like, this is the guy. We got him. And she's all in mourning still. She's dressed in black completely. And she comes up to the chief, and she says, "You knew that a girl got attacked by a shark the day before, and you didn't do anything. And you did nothing. And my boy's dead." That scene always gets me.
And that's not an actress. That's a townsperson.
Yeah. It's that lady. Yeah, that. Yeah, they used a lot of extra people from the actual town to use this movie, but it's just like, oh man, because you knew it too, like you knew it, and you really wanted to close the beaches too, but just the fact, just how she slaps him across the face, and she just leaves it. I wanted you to know that, like, oh.
And then the mayor says to him, you know, it's all right, you know, she's wrong, and he says, no, she's not. Yeah. You know.
Again, another thing about the mayor being a complete dick in this movie. Like, tourism. Let's get to directing and cinematography now. And as much as people might think, there might be a lot of people that think this, but I'm going to clear it up for you guys. Jaws is not an original movie from Steven Spielberg's mind. It is based off a book by, Nate, you know who the author is.
Peter Benchley.
Yeah. Peter Benchley wrote the book, and I have not read the book. And have you guys read the book at all?
No, I have not.
Not yet.
I know. I would like to read it, but he could, again, like Nate said at the beginning, he could have taken this movie. This movie could be taken in so many ways. It could have been taken in like an over the top way. It could have been.
It could have been Sharknado.
It could have even been Ghost Shark. Have you guys seen that one?
No, I haven't.
It's a real thing. Go look this up. It's a real thing. It's another Sci-Fi Channel movie. It's called Ghost Shark, and it's about a shark ghost, and it's amazing. I know we're not going to talk about it, but there's this one scene I have to mention from the trailer. It's this shark possesses a guy, and then like the ghost, the physical ethereal form comes out of the guy as a ghost shark, and it's so great. It's so great. But that's another time. That's another movie. But it was taken in such a serious tone, and where it doesn't even feel that half the time this is a movie. No. It feels like without being corny, it feels like the first found footage movie. Right. In a way, it does definitely.
Yeah, I mean it. You know, Spielberg, like he was in his late 20s when he did Jaws. A lot of people don't realize that, and yeah, he was. It's one of those. Even though he wasn't, Steven Spielberg was not Steven Spielberg back then. But you could tell that even though he wasn't big back then as he is now, he, as a director, he's still the same. Like, you could watch Jaws, and then you could watch Catch Me If You Can, and he hasn't changed one bit. And you know, the movie was so over budget. Yeah. A lot of people don't realize how over budget it went. Like, they almost kind of put it on hold and say, hey, we'll finish this up at a later time. And Spielberg was like, you know, no, I can get this done. And he wanted to shoot on water, and everybody was like, don't shoot on water. But he was like, no, I want to make it feel like we live on an actual island. And he really kind of capture that. And you're right, Eric, it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like, okay, this is actually happening. This could happen.
And Hannah, I remember you saying earlier, before we recorded, you said something about the underwater shots.
Oh yeah, with the cinematography, how they had the handheld camera. You don't even really think about that because water's moving, so you're not thinking about the camera moving, but you get the eye level shots. So you feel like you are right there in the water, and you're just waiting for the music. The music. John Williams. I mean, that is a whole other character. Just the music itself.
It really is.
And when you don't hear it, it's almost as creepy as when you do hear it because you're just waiting for it.
That music has become so iconic. It's just as much as the movie has. It really speaks to. It's just because for the first couple of minutes of this movie, for the first couple half, like for the first entire half of this movie, you don't see the shark at all. All you hear is the music, and that starts, and it's completely enough, and it just starts scaring. Like that one, it's just so freaking scary. And then when you see the shark, and yeah, well, you said like when you first see it like under the waves, right handed, like.
Oh yeah, it's like horizontal and sideways, and you just see how big its mouth is, and it's about to take out a leg. Yeah. That's what you see. You don't see it like I almost thought the first time I saw it, it was gonna fly out of the water or something, but no, you barely see it. You just see like the side of his mouth. But it's enough because you can see how big it is. You're like, oh crap, this is worse than I thought.
It's so very subtle, and I don't care who you are. The image of a shark swimming underwater, like, and you see it just above the surface, that is one of the scariest things ever. Even if you're like behind glass in an aquarium, it's still freaking scary.
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned the music, and who would have ever thought? You know, John Williams is probably. Well, actually, there is no probably about it. He is the most celebrated movie music composer of all time, and rightly so. I mean, he's
next to Danny Elfman.
He's
pretty. I mean, he's pretty celebrated.
Yeah, but Danny Elfman doesn't have 5 Oscars.
No, not as much as him. Not as much as this guy.
But I mean,
he is. That's the only other one I can think of.
I think John Williams won his first Oscar for Jaws, and who would have ever thought that 2 notes played back and forth would be so iconic, you know? And yeah, it's probably one of the greatest movie scores of all time.
It's up there with like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and stuff like that. We already we're kind of into the special effects right now, so we're just going to keep going. For those of you who don't know, the shark didn't work. This animatronic shark was broken the entire movie. And Steven Spielberg even said if the shark worked, the movie wouldn't be as good as it is. And you don't know that when you're watching it, but now that you watch it again and you know it's broken, you can see how broken it is. But it works so well. It just completely works.
Yeah, and like I know this is one of my favorite scenes, but I have many, so it's fine. Like the part where the shark is taking the barrels under the water, like. The way that he chose to deal with the problem, I think, really works wonders. I mean, that was more scary to me. You're like, oh, there's 3 barrels on that shark. We're not losing that thing. And it takes them all under. Like, oh my god, he took the barrels under. But, I mean, it just adds to the menacing character that the shark's already becoming.
And what's cool is they don't say this. They just say it's a great white. They don't say they could have easily gone like, oh, it's a megalodon, which megalodons are a prehistoric shark that died off 1 million years ago. But they could have easily been like, oh, it's a megalodon that survived extinction. No, they just say it's a really badass great white shark, and that's what makes it even more scary is because it's real. Like, it's more grounded.
Yeah, and you know, one of the greatest ways that this shark, like you said, it's one of the great miracles about this movie is that the shark never worked, and one of the greatest things that I ever heard, I actually read a lot about Spielberg talking about this movie, and he said, you know, I promise you that if that shark had worked, that in the scene where Roy Scheider's kind of like, you know, come on down and show him some of this stuff, he said, I promise you if the shark had worked, then people would not have jumped 3 feet out of their chairs when that shark pops up. I've heard every time, like I've heard countless stories from my mother about that scene. You know, come down and jump some of this stuff, and then and she was just like, you know, 10 seats down the row. You know, and that's one of the great. You know, when you're talking about special effects, this movie could never be remade. It would not have the same effect digitally.
Not at
it looks, and you and we've discussed before practical and digital effects, and this is one of the occasions. Sometimes movies combine the two. This is one of those movies that works well just with practical because the shark looks so realistic, and you really believe, okay, I'm never going to the beach ever again.
You go to ankle deep water and be like, I'm good, I can stay here.
Yeah, I told you guys I was scared to go in the pool for years of time. I was like, why are you guys going in the water? Why would you do that? That's a horrible decision. It can feast there.
Yeah. But now we get to my favorite part of the show, where we all discuss our favorite scenes. And I'll go last, but who wants to go first in their favorite scene? Who wants to go first? Ladies first.
Okay, well, I already talked about the barrels, but still my favorite scene is Robert Shaw's speech. Because you've had so much suspense building that you kind of need a break too. So when you get, they're starting to actually get along, they're united, they want to kill this shark. And then we finally get this speech just out of left field. And, he's talking about the USS Indianapolis, which is a real thing that happened, by the way. This ship went down, 300 people survived. Yeah. And when he's, talking about the black, lifeless eyes, and then they turn over white, and just... And he does, the foreshadowing comes into play when he says the bites and the high-pitched screaming and guys cut in half, and you're just like, oh no. Oh no, I see where this is going.
Nate?
Yeah, that's, you talked about the foreshadowing. The last Quint's death, to me, is still... It is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, and to me, that movie's 30 years old, 40 years old maybe, 75, so that's, but to this day, Quint's death is still one of the most gruesome things I've ever seen in a movie, ever. And the other scene is the scene on the dock with where you see the big piece of meat go out, and then he just takes the dock, and you don't see the shark, but what you see is the dock go out and then turn around, and the crescendo of John Williams music, and then and then don't take my word for it, don't look back, swim, and it's one of those goosebumps. No matter how many times you see the movie, you get goosebumps every time.
That's how I am with this whole movie. No matter how many times I see this movie, I've seen it a lot, and I still get so tensed up when that music hits. I get tensed up when you see the shark. I still jump when I see the shark. It's just so that's what makes a good movie. Is no matter how many times you see it, you can still be enthralled with the story and not have to analyze it. But my favorite scene actually is the very beginning of the movie, with all the hippie kids sitting around the campfire, and they're singing their kumbayas and everything, and this little guy and this gal are trading glances. They're kind of a little tipsy, but it's at nighttime, and this crazy free love girl says, "Let's go swimming," and then they just start going swimming. I think he might hate hippies. That may be. He's no flower child. But even before watching this movie, I remember hearing somewhere, because coincidentally, as a kid, I used to kind of read a lot about sharks because I thought that they were cool when I was a kid. And I knew sharks fed at night the first time I was watching this. I was 12 when I watched this first time. And even then, I knew sharks fed at night. So I'm like, what is this girl doing? And she just goes out there. But my favorite part about it is how simple it is. And yet it still installs fear in people. She goes out, she's just in the water, she's splashing around, moving around, and then you see the camera, it goes up under her, it's got that low angle shot of her going up, and then just tug, what was that? And then it's 5 seconds, and then tug, and then she's just getting tugged, and and she's screaming, and the guy's like passed. The guy she was gonna make out with in the ocean is passed out because he's like, I'm too drunk to swim, so he's just passed out. And but it's just so simple. It sets up the movie so perfectly because that's the first shark attack, and it just sets it up so perfectly because again, you don't see the shark for half the movie, and then it just the way it just sets it up, and you're just like, oh, this just got real. Oh man, you wanted to say something?
Well, we discussed, that part of the beginning where she gets dragged and then she is clinging onto that buoy. I watched an interview where she actually said, that she's reciting the Lord's Prayer when she's hanging on. And isn't that so creepy? She's reciting the Lord's Prayer right before she dies.
Okay, now that I know that, now it's even more my favorite scene. That's awesome. Well, now this is where we talk about the ending. Now, if you're one of the 5 people on this planet that have not seen Jaws, leave the room, or pause this movie, pause this podcast, and then go watch the movie. Thank you. Pause the podcast, go watch Jaws, and then unpause this. We'll be here when you get back. I promise. I'll give you a couple seconds to pause this movie, pause this podcast, and then we will start.
Suspense.
Done. Okay, so pause it right now. So, about that ending where Jaws blows up. Just for those of you who don't know, we're recording this in a classroom that we just got done. Our teacher let us do it, and she hasn't seen the movie, so she literally sped out of here. But yeah, about the scene where Jaws blows up, how perfect of an ending is that? Just like a metaphor.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of. Well, and I recently watched the movie twice in a row, like over the course of like 36 hours. I watched the movie, and Hannah, you mentioned the. I couldn't get your name right there for a second. You mentioned the foreshadowing about Robert Shaw's speech, but if you think about it, there's also foreshadowing when Roy Scheider falls on the compressed air tanks. If you're not careful, these could blow up, and you're thinking, okay, something's gonna happen here, and we mentioned this before too, how I love it. I personally love it when swear words are cut off by explosions or something. And I watched this kind of 2-hour documentary on the making of the movie, and the author of the book was like, no, this could never happen. A shark would never bite down on an air tank, and this could never happen. And Spielberg was like, you know what? No. And he said, if I've had the audience for 2 hours, they'll believe what I do in the last 5 minutes. And it's such a perfect ending, and the character development. The irony of Roy Scheider's character, how he hates water at the beginning of the movie, and now he has no problem swimming to shore. I mean, it really is kind of like the perfect ending.
Well, and also just that he doesn't just die. He is exploded into thousands of pieces. That thing is done. And we've seen blood in the water from all these kids being murdered every time, right? And then it's the shark's blood that's just spreading out in the water. And the dinosaur sound when he's like, the shark's going to the bottom, it was from a sound effect that he reused, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's actually, Spielberg did a movie in 1971 called Duel. It was a made-for-TV movie about this truck that chases this guy. And at the end of the movie, the truck suffers the truck gets blown up, and it goes and tumbles down this hill and blows up. And he reused the sound of the truck, like crashing, for the It does kind of sound like a dinosaur, but he reused that sound for Jaws.
I was really hoping when you said dinosaur sound, I'm like, please tell me that he reused sounds, that he used the same sound in Jaws that he was going to use in Jurassic Park. That's what I was really hoping you were going to say, because I didn't know that. I'm like, oh, please tell me he uses the same sound in Jaws as he uses in Jurassic Park, because that's awesome.
Well, the other thing too is that Hannah, you mentioned that it's not just dead; it gets blown up and it's done. The irony of that is that there are 3 sequels to this movie.
Yeah.
Couple of them are garbage.
A couple?
They're
all garbage.
Jaws 2 is not that bad. It's not, but Spielberg did make the best one.
Yeah. It's Hannah, you were mentioning this I think earlier about how you don't see a little baby shark eating the remains or something.
Yeah, like, I was just really glad that it felt like a whole movie by itself. Like, we didn't get the hint that there was, like, a baby Jaws in the making, like, feasting on the remains of the real Jaws. Like, it was just over, and you're just so relieved.
Yeah.
And then you've got the barrels that they're using as their flotation devices to get home. I mean, it's ironic, right?
Yeah. I think the shark blowing up is a perfect metaphor for the ending of the movie, because through this whole movie you're tensed up. You're like you're like this is the whole movie. You don't know, because you don't know where this shark's going to pop up. You don't know what's going to happen, and you're just tensed up through the entire movie. And metaphorically and actually, it all explodes in one scene. Yeah. And it's just and you feel as much relief as the characters do when they're paddling back on the raft made of the barrels, and you just feel as much relief as they do. Like, oh my God, it's finally over. Yeah. Like you've in the process you've tensed you've probably tensed up a couple pounds away because you're tensed up so much, and you're just like, oh my God, it's finally over. Yeah, you enjoyed every minute of it, right. But it was just a perfect cap to the end. And by the way, I think the worst out of the sequels is Jaws 3D. In my opinion.
Is that the one where he goes through the aquarium wall?
Yeah, that is the one where where there's this lifeless, non-moving thing of Jaws, and it looks like a piece of frozen bread. And he's flying, he's like gliding. There's no fin movements at all. There's no like nothing. It's just I'm just doing a motion with my hand, but it's just like and he crashes through the glass, and he just eats this, and the first guy eats is the black guy. So
well, I mean, like I have all 4 of the movies, but I remember when I got Jaws 3, I'm like, didn't it come with glasses? Like no 3D glasses? Like, this movie's really gonna suck now because I don't have the 3D glasses. Yeah, like like it's not the poor writing, poor special effects. No, the glasses are gonna ruin this movie for me.
It's just the premise of that movie was just like, oh, it's in an aquarium. Like, what? It's like, okay, and then you decide to put a killer shark in your aquarium. What? Oh, and P.S., just because I'd like to mention this, there was a video game adaptation of Jaws. There's 2 that I can recall. There was the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System game called Jaws, and it's a terrible game where you just pilot all you do in the game is you pilot a little ship, which I assume is the Orca, and you're going around collecting seashells, and every so often you have to dive underwater and shoot stingrays and stuff. And then every so often and then it says there's a fin in the water, and you go above around it, and it says you hit Jaws, and then there's like this giant little Jaws that
So you don't even like shoot at him?
No, you do when you run into him, you do, but he takes like 1,000 million hits. And I've played the game
because it's Jaws. Of course, because it's Jaws. It takes 1 million hits.
But you're just this little swimmer guy. And you're just like pew, 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 pew. You're shooting that's literally the sound effect, and you're literally shooting crosses at them. That looks like what I think are supposed to be harpoons, but they look like little crosses, like Jesus. Yeah, it looks like.
Speaking of, I'm sorry, I just thought of this. During the movie, you know how Hooper puts like the GPS, or the GPS. Obviously, that's not what it was at that time, but there's some kind of tracking device. But it was like glowing green, and I never realized that before until I watched the movie again. How creepy that looks!
Yeah.
It's like a glowing green
Yeah.
orb above a gigantic shark. I don't know. It was just
Yeah.
like
It's weird.
almost supernatural looking.
And then the other game I just want to talk about because it's called Jaws Unleashed. It was released for the PlayStation 2.
I played that.
And Nate knows what I'm talking about. You actually play as Jaws
It's just
in this game. And it's actually as awesome as it sounds. But it's so bad. Like,
it really it's like when you watch Batman and Robin. You know, it's so bad, but you can't help but to keep it up.
yes, I just want to say this right now. Eventually on this show, we are going to talk about Batman and Robin. And
God save us all.
me and Nate absolutely love this movie.
I'm gonna have to watch it approximately like 20 times in like a 2-day time frame to come close to like a tenth of the amount of time that you've spent with it.
We have spent a lot of time with it. It is one of my favorite bad good movies. But that's another time. Oh god, this could go on forever, but we need to end it right here. This has been Movie Crunch. This is our first episode. Hope you guys liked it. If you did, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, and hopefully we'll be on iTunes soon enough. If we are already on there and you're listening to it through iTunes, go you. And if you found us on YouTube, awesome. Just subscribe down at the bottom. Also, hit the like button because it really helps us out a lot. Also, a couple other of us have YouTube channels, and Nate, you have a blog that you mentioned. We'll go around and talk about our YouTube channels, and because Hannah, you mentioned you wanted to start one. Tell them a little bit what's going to be about.
Well, it's going to be mostly about female roles in film. I don't see a whole lot of blogs or otherwise about that, so I'm going to hit that up. It's going to be called Lady Parts. Get excited.
I love the name. Seriously. If you want to check out my stuff, I'll put links when Hannah makes her YouTube. I'll put links at the bottom of this audio track in the description. My YouTube channel will be linked down there too. It is called Mild Mannered Geek. And what I do on my channel is I talk about nothing but superheroes and supervillains and comic books because that is a huge love of mine, along with movies. I love everything about that. So if you want to see anything about that, go down and click the subscribe button and watch a couple videos. And Nate, what would you like to link to you with them?
Well, first of all, is it weird? Can I say that I'm excited about Lady Parts? Can I say that? Can I say that in public? Yeah, I'm basically I'll be starting a movie blog basically for everyone that. And I was kind of skeptical about doing this at first, but I figured for people out there who don't listen to podcasts and read blogs, I'll basically be discussing the same movies that we discuss in our podcast, and that way it's a kind of a two-way street for those of us who don't listen to podcasts. They can read blogs. For those of us who don't read blogs but listen to podcasts, they can do that. And so yeah, that's basically what I'll be doing.
I like that idea too. And just to get you guys excited, because we do one of these every week. So we'll do next week. We'll have a new episode of Movie Crunch. And Nate, what movie are we doing? Get them excited.
Well, it seems fitting that I'm announcing the movie that we're doing. I know that's why you did it. That I'm announcing the movie that we're doing, considering that I just watched it for the first time a couple of weeks ago. But it's Animal House. Again, I just watched Animal House for the first time a couple weeks ago. It's awesome, and that's the movie that we'll be discussing next week.
All right. So for Movie Crunch, I'm Eric.
I'm Hannah.
And I'm Nate. Spielberg is God.
Thanks for that. Tune in next time for more movies and such on Movie Crunch. See you guys next week.